Okay, let's see if the audio is good tonight. Good evening from the Pompey Observatory. It is Nebula night, Caldwell Nebula night. But of course we're starting with TCRB, and it is still there. Let me adjust exposure. And cut the infrared, and we should be good to go. Yep, there is TCRB, and we should be leaving dwarf alone to keep an eye on it for the first part of the evening at least. I don't know if this makes any difference or whether this is the way to go. Same thing. Okay. Looks like we're going to be pushing the gain on the microphone. No idea what has happened overnight in the past couple days. Hello, Jeannie. Well, it's supposed to go nova, and we're waiting for that. We even made a big title for it. So Dwarf is going to keep an eye on it the way it has for the past, oh boy, 4 months now. We started in April keeping an eye on TCRB before people could spell TCRB. Stellina has not been out for any while, but Nebula is a good place for Stellina to excel. I'm focused tonight. Hi Zena, welcome back. I'm focused tonight on the Caldwell catalog. And I try to identify nebula that will not be in the way of the moon, because the moon is going to rise around 11:20. So we may be done with our imaging, although these nebula are very challenging, and Stellina has a ceiling limit. It cannot go above 80 degrees in altitude. So the order in which I'm tackling them, I'm starting with the crescent, which is highest, before it gets any higher. Iris is a beautiful nebula. I'm anxious to see what Stellina can do with it. And then from there on, the two beautiful Veil Nebula, the East Veil and the West Veil. And then we'll hop onto Cocoon, which we have imaged many, many times. It is a Hoy's target. And then we wrap the night with the Bubble Nebula, which is an extremely beautiful nebula if we get it. It's very, very hard to image properly. Howdy, Stephen. Glad you're joining us. The smoke is still there. I'm going to try to pull a map for reference sake. We'll move TCRB out of the way so we can stick a map below. Cloud-wise, we should be good for the night. Fire-wise or smoke-wise, it just got worse. Let's see if we can add it here. Window capture. Oh, we want to send it to the back. Yep. That smoke it is. So right now we're being hammered nicely. Level 3 if you want to count levels here. It is worse than it was this morning. 8:45 time to let Stellina initialize. Just a little secret, don't tell anyone. I have Seestar on standby, warmed up, and ready to be called on if Stellina develops an attitude tonight. Stellina acts like a princess many times. Not that I have any problem with princesses, but I'd rather not have to deal with it tonight. Good evening, Iceland. Are you guys still burning? Or do you have the volcano under control? I wanted to get the big scope out tonight. I chatted with Zina earlier today about my hopes, aspirations, dreams to get the big scope out to image Saturn, but not with the smoke. I've had enough frustrations with it in smoke. When Stellina goes onto the autofocus routine, that is always good news. That says it has found the stars, it knows what it's looking at, it knows where it is. By the way, in case anybody cares, we got the answer to what happens after 12 hours of live stream. I streamed for 14 hours today. YouTube saved only the first 11 hours and 55 minutes and discarded everything else after that. Initialization successful. Look for a target Nebula. Okay, let's just search for it. The Crescent Nebula. Observe. It says 30 minutes, so we're going to keep our fingers crossed that we will have something good. The TV stations and other web entities that webcast and stream days on end, if you look at any of the major financial networks or news networks, it says live since whatever, August 2018. So YouTube made the decision that they're not going to be archiving anything beyond the first 12 hours of any given live stream unless you make the effort of stopping it and restarting it. Now we know. And in fairness, they are paying for the bandwidth, they are paying for the storage. Capture starting, that's the big test. Good. And I already see the crescent. So hopefully tonight it's going to be Stellina at her best. And I don't know, guys, if you heard the news that Boeing is going to bring back the space capsule minus the astronauts. Those two guys, or a guy and a gal, went on a one-way trip to eternity, or to the International Space Station. So when the ISS passes, I wave to them and say, so long. Zena, about 25 years ago when I started streaming athletic events on the web, I had to manage my own bandwidth and my own storage, and I had multiple providers that nickeled and dimed us on whatever we did on a per byte basis. Now none of that is a worry because YouTube handles all of it and does not charge a penny. All they want is permission to sell advertising. And right now, in this political season, they have no problem selling advertising. There are politicians I've never heard of who are advertising on my channel these days. Hi, Tariq. So we started at the Crescent Nebula 15 minutes into the webcast. I hope they have an extra change of clothes up there. I read a fascinating article today about a group of 6 Starlink satellites that SpaceX launched, intended to provide direct to cell phone cell coverage, and they appear blue in the sky as opposed to white. They're leaving blue traces, not white traces. Zena, as a necessary disclaimer, the appearance of ads on this channel does not constitute my endorsement of their content. Since YouTube is paying for us to be together tonight, and they want to run ads, I don't care. For those not familiar with Stellina, it came out about 4 years ago. At the time, it was state-of-the-art smart telescope. Among the various smart telescopes out there, Stellina is the one with the 3-inch aperture, which means it captures twice as much light per frame as Seestar and 9 times as much light as DWARF. Before I made the decision to buy Stellina, and it was expensive, I read a review from a NASA engineer who builds observatories for NASA, and he said all the software and all the hardware that he has ever worked with in his entire career in building observatories, all of it is in that one little station. 24-pound little telescope that looks out of this world. A white case, and you have no idea, no hint that it is a telescope. Stellina remains the only telescope with a rotating or a counter-rotating sensor to correct for the orientation or the movement of the Earth or the stars around us. It has a dew heater built in that turns on whenever it needs to. Autofocus, they all have autofocus now. None of them has a sensor that rotates with the movement of the telescope, except for Stellina. It has a reasonably good catalog. It does not have a sky atlas per se. But one thing that I want to mention about Stellina is it oversaturates the red in all the images that it takes. So if you like your reds to be hot, they will be hot here. Zena, what's the protocol? Does good evening mean you're joining and good night you're leaving? Welcome on board. The weather was brutally hot here today. It was 68 degrees. And I sweated when I went for my run. Fortunately, it's back to normal now. It is 54. I thought Arizona was dry heat, just like an oven. Good evening, Vessenhead. Thanks for joining us. When I compare dwarf to Stellina and Seestar on Nebula, dwarf does poorly because it doesn't have the right filters. We'll see if dwarf 3 will correct that. The ISS passes will be in the morning, so it's a very, very late night, and neither of them is favorable. The first ISS pass will be at 3:55, and the second one an hour and a half later at 5:28. But both are relatively low in altitude, so would not be good. Not good to image. Too much smoke between us and them. In the meantime, tomorrow night promises to be clear, and if with a lot of luck the smoke leaves us alone, we'll get the big scope out and try to look at Saturn, Jupiter, and Mars. Mars is getting bigger by the day. We're halfway to 30 minutes on the Crescent Nebula on C27. No, it is not. Zina, the bright spot, and I have my cursor. The bright spot here is Epsilon CRB. It's Epsilon Corona Borealis. TCRB is right here, this little one. Nothing exciting, but there it is. I don't know if we go to the atlas now, it will let us confirm. Let's see if it let us confirm where we are. Let me see the coordinates for TCRB. So if we go to Alphecca, where is Arcturus? Okay, Arcturus, and then we go up. Hello. Nope, we don't want that. We are looking for 16 hours and 25 minutes. Oh, this is between 240 . Okay, 255. Oh, there's Arcturus. This is Corona Borealis. It's not letting me zoom in. Sorry. Okay, we'll go back then. But this is the Corona Borealis star. Iceland, I don't think we're talking about the same bubble. The Caldwell 11 that I'm looking at is down near Cepheus, between Cepheus and Cassiopeia. Whereas the Crescent Nebula is in Cygnus. It's not the same. Hello, Sideburn soldiers. Yeah, the soap bubble nebula is Caldwell 56, and we're not gonna see it. But the bubble nebula without soap is C11. Genie, any eyepiece with the right size should fit and work with your telescope. make sure if you're looking at 1¼ inch, I suspect, then any 1¼ inch eyepiece should work. And good luck making it or getting into mead. Good afternoon, New Zealand. Hello, Kiwi. Are all those nebula visible to you down in the southern hemisphere? Crescent, Iris, Veil, Cocoon, and Bubble. Hello, Carlos. Did you get your Seestar to work in Texas? Carlos, believe it or not, I'm able to get the very, very large 16-inch mead to turn on and off on a using an IP switch, power switch. But I'm still unable to get Seestar to do that. Oh, good. Very good. Do you have a tablet in Texas, or are you going directly to Seestar via IP from your tablet in Miami? Athol, you're not allowed to mention sleepy here. Ah, okay. Very good. We have another 5 minutes to go on the Crescent Nebula, and then we'll move on. The other day I was doing one of Bill's targets, and Stellina indicated that she needs 3 hours to render it. I said, I don't think so. Where Dwarf, Seestar, and Stellina differ is the stacking algorithm and the stretching algorithm. Anybody can stack, and then the instantaneous post-processing that they do with every frame that's where they make their money. That's where they differ significantly. Carlos, I guess one of the first things that you may want to do is a horizon scan to find out if you truly have the full 360 degrees, and if not, which areas are blocked for you and which ones are good. by all means you can go 20-degree altitude and you should be clear the entire way. And one other caution with Seestar that would not have been an issue with dwarf is cord wrap. I don't know if you're going to be able to keep track of where the cord is so it does not wrap. What kind of pies do you like? Are we talking about fruit pies or steak and kidney puddings? My very first winter with Seestar, the cord froze to the table. And as Seestar was turning and it could not pull that cord anymore, it pulled itself and crashed. Literally, Seestar fell over on the table. Fortunately, it only traveled about 8 or 10 inches, so no harm was done. The table was fairly soft plastic. But that was an awakening, because I did not want it falling on hard concrete from much higher up. The dwarf engineers made the right call. The base does not move, period. That's where you plug the power. So you don't have to worry about it. With Seestar and Stellina, everything moves. The entire unit. Okay, one more frame and we'll be done with the crescent. I know if we stay longer it's going to look nicer, but let me show you one feature that other telescopes do not have, and that is replaying the stacking process. All right, let's take a picture. Let's take another picture. And thank you very much. 47 minutes, 48 minutes. And this one is also 30 minutes. 25 degrees northeast, it's 58 degrees above horizon, we are good. Yes, I'm going with the default 10-second exposures on Stellina. Hello, fellow. Zena, I had 3 deer in my backyard, a doe and 2 fawns. Fella, if this is your first visit, please subscribe to the channel. Thank you. This is station identification. You're watching the Pompey Observatory, the only channel on YouTube that goes live 5 or 6 times a week. Actually, we're more like 10 times this week, imaging the heavens. Looks like Stellina found its target. And yes, it has. Iris is a beautiful nebula, by the way. You will see a lot of darkness because of all the dust that's covering the stars behind it. Good evening, Larry. We just finished with our first nebula of the night, the Crescent Nebula. I'm focusing tonight on the Caldwell catalog and identified 6 nebula that then we can image safely despite the moon. I have done longer exposures, yes. I don't know if there's such a thing, Zena, as secret comments. If you find a way to do it, let me know. And we have a satellite that passed by. I don't know, Carlos, if there is a way to direct message on YouTube Live. That's what Facebook is for. I am Pompey Observatory on Facebook as well, if you want to find me. Yeah, Larry, I've done the Snowball Nebula, did that a while back. Actually, my list for tonight was fairly long and chose to narrow it down by Caldwell. Otherwise, I had Omega and Eagle and Cave. Actually, Cave is C9. I don't know why it's not on my list. We might add Cave tonight. Carlos, that's what big scopes are for. Jeannie and Zena, there is no secret here. Star Pictures Miami introduced himself as Carlos when he entered the chat. And Larry is Larry, and Jeannie is Jeannie, and Zena is Zena. And Athol is Athol. Don't overthink it. Larry, I think you and I talked about doing the ARP catalog someday. And that's going to require a bigger telescope probably, but I'm still planning to find the right time and the right set of ARP targets to go after them in one night. Yes, indeed. All the paperwork has been filed. Now we wait for the town planning and zoning boards to approve the subdivision. And then a public hearing, 30 days. And an optimistic goal is to close by Halloween, which will still give me a good part of the fall before weather gets too bad to start setting things up. Larry, I don't know if you heard me yesterday mention that I'm intrigued with the concept of getting a shipping container as the chart room for the observatory and putting the dome on top of it. This way it'll be a very convenient way of locking things up, and it'll be a lot faster and easier to build than an actual construction, and it has a slightly better chance of keeping mice out than a wooden frame or otherwise. Plus, putting the telescope on the roof, well, apparently you can buy. Let's take a step back. China is shipping so many things towards the US in containers that there is a huge aftermarket of one-trip containers, as they call them. Containers that have traveled only one trip, and they are selling them for as little as $1,500 for a 20-foot by 8-foot by 8-foot. That thing weighs about 4,000 pounds of steel, and they guarantee them to be leak-proof and airtight. And there are at least a dozen places near me that are selling them. In New Jersey, apparently the port down there is the big one. They will ship anywhere in the country. And I priced one today, $1,500. Actually, if you want to go with a 40-foot, it's an extra $35. So for under $2,000, I could be buying a 40-foot long, 8-foot high steel box, and then spend quite a bit of time for the fun of it, opening, cutting windows and doors in it. Thanks, Athol, for the pies. The telescope will be on the roof in its own sky shed pod, and I will have ventilation. The plan is to have air circulating through it. Carlos, many people have bought shipping containers and converted them into small houses. There is a whole industry converting containers into houses. I am not aware of anybody having used a container as the first floor of an observatory. Looks like we may be dealing with clouds. I'm going to ask Google AI if anybody has built a shipping container as an observatory. Actually, Cloudy Nights has 4 different topics discussing shipping containers as observatories. So to answer your question, yep, lots of people have done it. Larry, did you see the article about the latest 6 Starlink satellites that reflect blue light as opposed to white light? Apparently these are the direct to cell phone satellites that SpaceX is experimenting with. And not sure if it's the solar panels or something else, but their trails are blue. Okay, Athol just sent some pictures that he took with Seestar. Let me see the easiest way to show them. Okay, we're gonna hijack Dwarf for a minute. Alright, if I read correctly, this is C77 Centaurus A. This is the Lagoon Nebula M8. This is M27. Everybody knows the dumbbell. And that is M16, the Eagle Nebula with the Pillars of Creation in the middle. Thanks, Athol. Good night, Iceland. Good night, Gina. You're welcome. Carlos, I got the Helix Nebula a while back. Hi, Carlos. Hi, Jacob. We're at 23 minutes with the Iris Nebula. The iris is starting to show. But for some reason has not stacked anything lately. All right, Iris Nebula is done, and I suspect we are dealing with some serious clouding issues now. Okay, we have the East Veil. Yes, I have, Carlos. I stand corrected. This is the West Vale Nebula. Let me get you the link to. Yes, Stellina has a much wider, larger aperture. I'm looking for that video. There it is. Let me get you the link. This was Andromeda and Triangulum, side by side, Seestar and Dwarf. Carlos, remember that DWARF II does not have a dual band filter. Both Stellina and Seestar have the dual band filter. So when it comes to nebula, DWARF II is practically useless. DWARF III is supposed to fix that problem. And if you take a peek at what DWARF is looking at right now, it's a very cloudy sky. Epsilon Corona Borealis is showing through, but that's the only star. We're still dealing with smoke. Obviously, the smoke map is down there and it's getting worse. We are under the dark gray. Let's hope this is not another short night. And Carlos, as you look at the comparison between DWARF and Seestar, DWARF has a much wider field of view. So M31, M45 are, they look a lot nicer with DWARF than they do with Seestar or Stellina. In the meantime, Stellina is still stacking, which is good. As a quick reminder, DWARF is on the west wing, staring west at TCRB, and Stellina is on the east wing, staring east at the Veil Nebula. So let's see how long our luck will last. I thought it has been a good summer, but for the past 3 years our summers have been punctuated with smoke coming from the fires in the west, whether it is the Canadian southwest or the American northwest. Carlos, Stellina preceded Seestar by about 2 years and preceded DWARF. It's a French-made telescope, smart scope, And back then it was state of the art and second to none. I'm going to get you a link to Stellina very quickly. They no longer talk about Stellina. Oh yes, they do. Okay. I paid $4,000 for it about 4 years ago. And in hindsight, it was worth every penny. It transformed my astronomy in a way that I never imagined possible. What convinced me to buy it was a NASA engineer who said he spent his entire career building observatories for NASA, and every piece of hardware and every piece of software that he ever used were all inside that 24-pound Stellina. So besides the fact that it's 3-inch or 80 millimeters as opposed to 50 or 24, it is the only telescope on the market with a field derotator. The sensor actually turns. That's why you do not see any field rotation on any of the pictures. It has a built-in dew heater, it has a built-in autofocuser, it has a built-in plate solver. You don't need to polar align it. You just tell it go to and it goes to. Pretty much everything that Seestar has, Stellina did or had 4 years ago, with the added benefit of the field derotator. I have the ability to choose the orientation of the sensor with which I want to image a target. None of the other telescopes give me that. All I need to do, and I'll show you with the next target, we can try to frame it as such. I just put my 2 fingers on the screen and rotate it, turn it, or move it any way I want, and then that's how it's going to image it. I can't do that with Seestar or with DWARF. And back then, the ability to stack the images live in real time was unheard of. So yeah, it was worth it back then. If I had intended to assemble a rig with everything that Stellina has, it would have cost about the same. Now, if Seestar comes through with a large aperture device, that'll be fun. I don't know, Larry. I wouldn't hold my breath, but yes, I do hope so too. Either a feed rotator or a proper equatorial mount, and we'll be all set. Good night, Carlos. Yes, do keep me posted. Genie, it looks like Stellina is still stacking, so keeping our fingers crossed. As long as that little square in the bottom left is red, I am happy. If it turns gray, it means the sky has turned gray. And then I try to move to a different part of the sky. It is still stacking, so we're good. Yes, it did that earlier with the Iris Nebula. It just turned gray when it stopped stacking, and not much you can do at this point except either move to a different target or call it a night. We're almost 20 minutes into Veil, and we're still good. But if you look at the right screen, nothing. Solid cloud. It's time to check the radar. Oh no. Ladies and gentlemen, I regret to say that this is the end of our evening. We have a major thunderstorm moving our way, which was not in the forecast this evening. But the radar is showing it about 10 miles out. So I'm going to wish you all a good night. I'm going to go run down and bring telescopes in.